Hello. I got to sit down, I think. That's what we're learning. I want to get right to it, and thank you all for coming. The panelists today are amazing, and I just want to let them talk because they're the best. So first up, Caitlin Stasey, come on down. Among Caitlin's credits, Class of '07, Mayans MC, Rain, Please Like Me, the film Smile. Welcome.
Thank you. I didn't realize you'd all be kind of beneath me. So
Yeah.
I had to hike my Spanx up a lot.
We're going to be modest, or attempt it, at least for the first 10 minutes.
I can look at myself in that mirror the whole time.
Nice. Jerrie Johnson of Harlem and Good Trouble. Welcome.
Utilize your resources.
Exactly. And Joel Kim Booster, writer, producer, if you don't know who. Fire Island, Loot, Search Party, everything you like, Joel has been part of it. That's basically the deal. Brian Michael Smith, actor, director, producer, 9/11 Lone Star. Woo! Should we just keep doing that? Let's keep doing that. Yeah. Thank you all for being here. I'm
Thanks
so excited. And my thing here is I want you to have a good time, and I want everyone here to have a good time, so I want to hear you talk. This is sort of a two-parter, and anyone can jump in. Whether it's I was thinking a project you've been part of or a project you haven't been part of, where, the title of the panel, I'm being really obvious, but like, what's a queer character where you're like, that's it. I'm responding to that, whether you were in that part of that project or not part of that project. Where were some where you had a moment of recognition, if that has been a thing you have encountered?
There's this new show on, I think it's on Prime Video, called Harlem, and there's this character.
Tell me more.
Yeah, named Ty, I think Taisha May Reynolds. And I really feel connected to her, really. Just
Why
being
is that?
a boss. She's beautiful, funny. I don't know if you all saw it, but it's like, I'm like, wow, I don't think I've ever seen someone as beautiful on screen. And I resonate with that, being, I came out as beautiful earlier this year. And so I'm just
so brave.
I was like holding it for so long.
Proud of you.
Thank you. But I just had to just do it.
You had to speak your truth.
Yeah. I broke the internet a few times. And so, yeah, I just feel really connected to, and I've never seen a character like that. So, yeah.
Anybody else?
I feel like in 2015, I was at New Fest, and the very first time I saw a Black trans man character was in this movie called Black is Blue by Cheryl Dunye.
Oh, yes.
And I had seen Laverne Cox on Orange is the New Black, and that had really given me some hope about, being able to be a fully authentic, truthful trans character. And seeing her backstory told in such a way that was authentic and powerful gave me power, in of myself to feel like, okay, I can continue on my path. I can be an actor. I don't have to shave off parts of myself and hide parts of myself to really do what I feel like I'm meant to do. But it wasn't until I saw just this Black trans man living his life in such an authentic way, in such a beautiful story. And it was a short film, but that really kind of set my feet in the right direction and just confirm that, hey, I'm on my path and I just want to continue, doing what I need to do. And it was a really, really powerful experience for me.
I'm having a lot of trouble actually with this question, which I think is part of the problem. Yeah. There's a movie called Happy Together that is an incredible movie, and it's a love story between two Asian men. And that I remember seeing quite when I was in high school, and it was the first time I'd seen someone who looked like me and was like me, two Asian men together too. And unfortunately, I think that I saw that over a decade ago, and I haven't really seen anything similar to that since. And so yeah, it's difficult. I think that's why that's sort of why we do what we do up here, is to sort of, create more and get that out there.
I feel similarly in the way that, like, I think white women have been represented, pretty much constantly and objectified throughout film constantly. But it was tough to really find, like, lesbians. And I was always like, lesbians kissing, lesbians going, holding hands. And the first time I ever really remember seeing two women together on screen was the music video for All the Things She Said by Tattoo. And I literally was like, on the screen in my grandma's living room. It was pretty, and then I would just keep watching it until I wanted to, like, I felt so hungry for, and the content.
Go on.
For the content, yeah. Like I was seeing people who looked like me, but I didn't see, like, the relationships that I wanted to be a part of. And so now it feels very different. I think we're really good at showing queer, not really good, but, like, I think queer women are getting a bit more of a sort of, like, burst on TV, you know what I mean? No pun
intended.
Yeah. Yes. More sexual satisfaction, the studies show. But yeah, I still think we've got a long way to go in terms of showing, like, bisexual men and queer men and, like, all that kind of fluidity throughout there.
I will say, speaking of Cheryl Dunye, when I was in undergrad, she has a film called The Watermelon Woman, and it was the first time, that I saw a Black queer woman, and it was just like, it really wasn't about her being, like, a queer woman. It was, like, about her finding this story about this older Black queer woman, and then her, like, falling in love, and, like, it felt like everybody in the movie was queer, and so it just felt like kind of a queer utopia discovery film, and this was the first time that I had seen that, especially with the Black woman being in control of the story and telling the story.
That never happens, almost never.
Yes, especially in film.
It's so interesting too, because I think because there is such a lack of representation, specific representation, and queer people especially are so trained, I think, to find their own experiences and the experiences of others. Like I think that's why, like, gay men love, like, women so much, is that I find, like, a lot of the, like, representation or, like, the things that made me feel seen growing up, and even now as an adult, like, are oftentimes not even queer movies or something. Like I'll watch, like, Death Becomes Her, and I'll be like, yes, that's it.
Yes. Oh my God, I love that
and
movie.
It's like, it's so weird, but I think it's because at least people of our generation, I don't want to age any of you up here, I'm old, but
17.
I'm so old. You have
Yeah.
no idea. I've had so much work done.
But it is just like you're so not used to seeing yourself that you just have to find it in, like, little grains of, like, Goldie Hawn performances growing up, and that's what you do.
Someone, I can't remember who said it, but someone said that queer audiences are nomads. Like, everyone's like, the word goes out, and it's like, we're watching this now because there's one queer person, there's one trans person, they will go from show to show and tell, like, and it's like, what makes me furious about that is that people go from show to show only to watch that character, quite often get killed off, be, just basically a tragedy porn character, and it's not that the struggles of the community should be reflected, but they should be authentic and specific. And that's not what happens a lot still.
Well, and that actually causes a lot of resentment, I think, in our community too, towards the one show or movie that we get, because that one show or movie is then asked to represent a huge tent, a huge spectrum of experiences. And it's no one show or movie is going to do that. And so I think, like, queer audiences are being told, like, this is for you, and it's like, well, it's not for all of us, or it shouldn't be for all of us, and it's not going to be for all of us, and then you get frustrated.
But if you don't support it, you're disloyal.
Exactly. Yeah.
I also would to your point about queer men and like women, I do think too, like there was a time where all these queer icons were like just these badass women who were living their life who weren't even queer, like Grace Jones and like all those folks. And it's something about that like freedom and liberation and breaking the barriers that I think queer people are attracted to. But a lot of time, I mean, recently we've gotten a lot more like queer artists who are more in the forefront. But like Beyonce is a queer icon, and that's a cishet woman with children and a husband, you know? But there's something about, especially this new album, there's something about like us wanting to feel spoken to, you know, or wanting to like the feeling of wanting to break free that a lot of times doesn't come from the camel's mouth. Is that a thing?
It is now. It is now, Jerry.
Write that down. The camel's mouth. You heard it here first.
Didn't come from the camel's mouth.
Jerry's new podcast, The Camel's Mouth, coming to Earwolf.
Please subscribe. You know, Andrew, the director of Fire Island, he said a phrase that I wish I had worked into. Oh God, I'm going to do it. I'm going to talk about my book just briefly. I wanted to work in the phrase in one of his interviews, rep sweats, he called it. Representational sweats. Like, because there is there's immense pressure to, okay, build a well-rounded character, build a world around those characters, ideally multiple characters, ideally multiple queer people who are different from each other and identifiable and, you know, authentic and specific. Also, don't piss off anyone in the community. It's like, that's not a fair ask.
Well, and the thing is that straight people, like, there are so many, everything is for you. And so it's very easy to see something and go, oh, that's not for me, move on to the next. Whereas for us, because we're being told like, this is for you, there's nowhere else to go. You know, like I had a lot of people who saw my movie who were like, I fucking hate rom-coms. And I was like, well, then you shouldn't have watched my movie. But they felt like they were sort of like forced to, because everyone was like, you have to watch the gay movie that is out right now. And it's like, no, they should be allowed to not have to watch it and just and then have a wealth of other options that speak to their interests too, in terms of genre and other qualities. But instead it's like, no, you get this gay movie and so you must watch it, and then you have to talk about it, and you know, it's frustrating, I think.
Well, I want to jump on that because I feel like the problem is like, stop making stuff for us and just let us make things.
Yes.
Open
Yes.
the door and let us create things. Because then you'll see, as we all know, there's nuances within our community. And it's like, you don't have to just put the one gay character in there, the one lesbian character, the one trans character. We all have friends. We all have queer friends. And you will get that's what I like about Harlem. There's a variety of queer representation sort of. And, you know, and if you allow queer content creators to create their own things and tell their own stories and not say, this is going to be the one thing, we're giving you the opportunity to do the one thing, then we'll be in a better place to see the breadth and all the colors of the rainbow, if you will.
Okay, the other thing for sure I was going to bring up on this panel, because it's relevant, is Star Trek. Because like I queerify every Star Trek episode that I watch, and that's just how I roll. But in Star Trek Strange New Worlds, there was one, I rewatched the season, there was one episode where a trans actor played a character. I don't believe that the character that they made, you know, that they overtly ascribed that to the character, but spoiler alert, like it seemed like this person was a good, noble person, but then it turned out they had like, you know, a nefarious agenda. But the thing about this, because we all have to be really careful of like, what happens when the queer character is the villain? Oops, like it's bad. Like it's like there's a history of just horrible, one-dimensional, stereotypical, offensive, you know, queer villains in Hollywood history. But what I loved about how they wrote the characters, you know, they made it a character whose agenda you understood. Do you know what I mean? Like it was a fun, cool, adventurous space, pew pew pew. Like the gay space pirates is like 100% my jam. Like if you have pirates in your show and they're gay and they're in outer space, I will watch every episode. But what I loved about that was that, yeah, you know, a queer character can be anything. Can be the lead, the best friend, the villain. It's in how you approach the depth and dimensionality of that character. And I wonder if you guys could talk about, you all could talk about what leads to, you you've already touched on it, creators being put in the driver's seat of the project who are of the community and tell the story. But what are the things that lead to the kind of roles you want to see or play or be part of?
I think that has to do with just like good writing. And I know that sounds really simple, but like if you write something well and it is thoughtful, then you can really kind of put anyone in any position. And what is kind of frustrating is sometimes as an observer and watcher, I see people kind of put non-white or non-cis het characters in this kind of like, there's like kind of a nobility complex where they want to showcase that like this person has no flaws, they kind of are like clean, you can't really criticize them, and therefore you can't criticize the creator for it. And I get why that happens. There's fear, which is why it's important for people to tell their own stories. But playing a villain is the most fun you can have on camera. Like it is so pleasurable to be someone who's got like a motive that is purely their own, or part, like, if they're like, just to be a nerd, like, lawful good, lawful evil, all of those different spectrums. Hey, some D&D fans, right on. But yeah, so, this is just coming as somebody who like enjoys watching people get to be duplicitous and dastardly. And I think that like, it's important to let everybody be bad. You don't have to be the ambassador of your own like type or race or gender. Like you get to be an individual, or at least that's what I would hope for. It's easy for me to say because like white women are the villains now, so we would.
And I think too, having more than one queer character in your project allows the freedom for someone to be, duplicitous and evil, and not feel like, oh, the one gay character is the evil one, or the one trans character. If there's more people who are, again, like, somewhere on the spectrum, then you can have that sort of freedom.
No, I completely agree. But let's also talk about, we've touched on it, and I do want to keep returning to what do we want to see, but what's the thing you never want to see again in terms of queer characters or queer storylines? Like I can't anymore with this. I just cannot.
I don't want to see women kiss each other like this. Hate when that happens.
Yeah. On a similar vein, I'm really intimacy coordinators really need to go through a masterclass in gay sex, because some of the angles in the anal that I'm seeing are quite literally impossible.
They're aspirations.
Yeah. That's a really tough thing, though, because I think that anything tropey or even like quote unquote stereotypical has a place as long as there's depth to it, as long as it's sort of a built out around a well-rounded character. Like I think a lot of times, like I certainly got dinged for this of like, oh, all gay characters are hypersexualized in the media, which is a fair critique in some aspects, but I am writing from my own experience and I have a lot of sex, and I think there's a way to do that well, and I'm not gonna pare back my own experience because it's been done poorly so often before, and I think like there's just a way to do all of anything that like we are frustrated by because it's stereotypical can be written around and given depth and reason, and it's just like it's there's just a way to do it right. And so I'm open to seeing any of the things that have frustrated me before. I mean, I would like to see less death and less coming out. I think we've seen a lot of that. But again, like I hesitate to say like no more coming out stories, because there's plenty more. There's always going to be more like to do well in that space.
I may be wading into something I shouldn't weigh in on being a white woman, but I'll just say like the trope of the parents of color who are judgmental, and like I don't love that either. Like when it's a character who's coming out, and quite often you see white parents as being, "We love you, Billy. It's great," but like
and those be the ones that don't say "we love you, Billy."
No,
so
exactly. And like
about
so, like I often like if the parents are on the scene, they're often like portrayed in a way that is not true to. I don't know, like. The families of queer people too exist, and they are varied, and like let's bring a character's whole world make everybody complex and not just the parents that get one scene and are like, well, we don't understand this at all and we disown you. Like that starts to seem like a trope that we've maybe seen too many times. Brian, I'm sorry, Jerrie. No, go ahead.
Oh, but so to Joel's point though, like, if that's somebody's story and that's their experience, right, then that's the thing. But also to create that variety, right? Because I know some people with evil white mothers, you know? And so I just want to see more of that. And I'm going to play them. Exactly. And we have someone ready to play, right?
I want representation for my people.
Yeah, that's actually what you're saying is more evil white mothers, not less evil mothers of color. And so now we're getting to the thick of it. And so I think what the question is a complex question because there are so many experiences. So there's not something that I want to see less of. I just want to see more of it done well. And so it's like, but if it's your story, I also think that there should be, I'm excited to get to the place where we're allowed to have queer mediocrity, right? Where things are just able to just be like a regular ass story about queer people in the house or some shit like that. Because now we have to be like, everything has to be super good and it has to be, because if it fails, then all of these other things are going to fail. And somebody said no to me because this person tried to do it and they didn't succeed. And so it's just like, we need.
I talked about this at the panel yesterday, but when I was originally pitching Fire Island as a television show before it became the movie, the amount of times that I got no and looking was brought up as a reason why. And it's so funny to say looking was a failure because it was 3 seasons in a movie, which is pretty successful. But the amount of networks that were like, no, nobody watched that show. And so we're nervous. This is too similar. And it's like, could not be any different other than it just having gay characters. And so we are like, and it's like, how many shows about white people in bars fail? And yet we keep making them, and it's frustrating because we are so often like not, given credit for our successes and then expected to bear the brunt of all our failures too. And it does not seem fair or just.
And also it's harder and harder now to make your own kind of like, IP, you know what I mean? Like people really want something that already exists. And I imagine what's really difficult is like a lot of what already exists entertains a very specific looking kind of person.
Well,
say you.
Literally, that's why, that's a big reason why, I love Jane Austen, but I don't know that Fire Island would have gotten made had it not been based on prejudice, like that was really sticky and really like exciting to, Suits, because like they were like, oh, people like that property already. That movie has been done a million times, so let's do it one more time. And like, it's exactly that. Like, I guess we all have to like, it's like wrapping the dog medicine in a piece of cheese. Like, find gay sex and wrap it in an old classic.
You're our medicine.
But the thing is too, then, right? Like, if you do that well and succeed at that thing, then it's like the one gay person that they're throwing all the projects at, right? Like they got an Emmy nom or they're, won an Emmy or whatever. And then they get to just make all of these decisions. And sometimes, and I'm like, that's great because they do that with straight people all the time. But then it's like, there's so many diverse voices right now. This person is the voice of queerness because they wrote a good scene about queer, whatever. And rightfully so, like you should have some ownership and you definitely should be thrown money, but also there's other things that need to be made and other voices that need to be heard as well.
And look at that success as, this is why we should do more, that the audience does want to see this, and that people are tired of the same old thing. And if you pay attention to the numbers, it's like, look how many people tuned into Pose who are not of the ballroom community because they've never seen anything like that before. So it's like there's a hunger for it, there's a taste for it. The queer audience in and of itself is growing, and there's trillions of dollars within like this industry. So this thing that they're doing where they're trying to use the same formula to exclude the voices that are actually going to bring them the revenue that they're desperately seeking. It's confusing and it's frustrating.
You make an excellent point about the chase for IP, because I've been covering the industry now for 200 to 300 years. And it frightens me because, the New York Times did a study of the books published in the last 60 years. 95% of the books that they script, fiction, novels published by major houses, 95% of it was white folks. So if we're doing a chase for IP, you can find similar stats in comic books, and I understand. And what I also see a lot of is, look at us, we've cast a number of queer actors. Great, I love it. We have some queer, great. I love it. Who's in charge of it? It's a white dude, a cis straight white dude is like the executive and the person who's like in charge of the film or this TV show. And I'm like, okay, I understand, but sometimes it's like there's a glass ceiling for like who can be in charge of the narrative, and they are giving it to the usual suspects. I think am I wrong, or are there more opportunities?
That's I actually talked about that on my last panel. That on screen definitely looks different, more diverse. But there is a cap to that, right? Like you're on the set and you might not see people who look like you, even though everybody on the other side of the screen does, right? And then when the decision making happens, there's a person that has a final say that sometimes isn't even an artist, that most of the time doesn't look like any of the people in the project, but somehow, if they're the money makers there, they're making a decision. And a lot of times it's a business decision, or what they think is a business decision, right? So when we're talking about stats and like proof and all of that, that's a business mind. That's not a creative or an artistic mind, which to some aspect is like, oh, okay, I understand. But also, who are you putting around you so that it's a balanced decision, right? That we can talk about the stats, but we can also say, but hey, let's look at it from this angle. We still want to take a chance on this, which I think is the thing that's probably lacking a little bit right now.
When we were casting Conrad Rickamora as my love interest in Fire Island, we got pushback from the studio because at this point, Margaret Cho was involved and Bowen was attached. And they literally said to me, when I brought Conrad to them, they were like, it just feels like there's a lot of Asians in this movie. And like, wouldn't you want to spread the diversity around a little bit? Was the exact wording of it. And had I not had 2 Asian producers and an Asian director on this project, I don't know that I would have had the backup to really push through and say, no, I want my love interest to be Asian. And I had never felt more insane, and then at the same time more taken care of because I had that backup. And like, we talk so much about diversity on screen, but until we talk and push for diversity behind the scenes too, nothing's going to change.
And it's very easy for me to sit here as someone who's been choosing to be on screen as opposed to the opposite. But as everyone is saying up here, like the thing I would urge, is my opinion, is that it is so important to become part of the team that does create and does know and does, because as an actor, your agency is very limited. Like, it's the coolest job. I love it so much, but like, you are like the last people put into the project. You're the first ones to come out of the project. The thing exists for years before you. It like lives for years after you're done with it. And so to have any kind of like impact, it is really important to become a writer, a director, a producer, all of the things that like you don't necessarily see immediately.
Well, a question that you get asked all the time, if you are that creator though, is this relatable though? And what they mean is it relatable for cisgender white people? That's really because those rooms that's who's in those. And I don't mean to erase the executives or the greenlighters or whoever who are not that. But for the most part, what people consider relatable is their experience, and the people who have the power to greenlight and write the checks and now you have the budget to go make the TV show or the movie. What they consider relatable is just not, they don't have the experience of the community. Is that often what you're finding? Or?
Well, I think the question more is not necessarily is it relatable, because I think things that are so specific become universal, and they are inherently relatable because you resonate with it because you understand it. So the question really is this comfortable for our audiences? Is this going to be comfortable for the cis white people who we think are going to contribute the most amount of money and viewership, or that we think our advertisers are going to think are the most valuable? And so that's really the question that these executives and moneymakers are asking. And the truth is they probably aren't, but they're going to get over it because they can relate to it. Yes. And then there's something that everybody's so attracted to, the freedom of expression and the boundary breaking and the barrier breaking that queer people, and people of color do. And those are the stories that everybody wants, the underdog, the hero who overcame the odds. So yeah, they can relate to it. They want to, but you have to be okay with the discomfort and that it's going to take for people to sort of break through the ideas they have about what they might watch.
Yeah, I think like trusting people to find themselves in the hyper specific is really like, again, like I was talking about it earlier of like growing up queer, like you learn to find yourself in stories that aren't about you, and straight people just aren't used to having to do that. And so it's going to take time for them to learn how to do that. But like, I think about like one of my favorite shows of the last like 10 years is Insecure. And not every joke in that show was for me. Not every reference in that show was for me. But I was okay with not getting it because I knew that I didn't feel talked down to. I didn't feel like she was like trying to explain everything about her culture and her community to me. But I was still able to enjoy it because it felt like, okay, this is someone's hyper-specific experience. I do not feel like I'm being talked down to, and I can still find enjoyment from it, and I can still relate to it in ways that because it's so specific. And I just feel like I wish more people would do that rather than like fight to be like, okay, no, we have to hold their hand and make sure that they understand every little in-joke and reference from your community. It's just so fresh. It's so annoying.
I mean, I watched a show in the 90s called The Dinosaurs about a dinosaur family, and I got it.
Yeah.
I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So if I can do that, I think y'all can watch a show about some gay people.
Yeah.
Everything can become a queer metaphor if you let it and you make it, and that's what I do.
But were there dinosaurs behind the camera is what I want to know.
Was this real authentic dinosaur representation?
I will say puppets probably did tape Sesame Street. Let's be real.
Well, so that's the thing. All of you, to get even a version of the stories that you want to see and that you feel like, would be cool to do and just fun and awesome for any number of reasons, the extra labor that is involved in the hand holding and the explanation and it's exhausting, right? Like, like other folks, industry's hard. The industry is a hard place, but the amount of labor that I believe queer creators and artists have to do to make other feel comfortable, as you said, Brian, it's just, there's so much of it. Is it ever make you think, I want to launch this whole industry into the sun? Or how do you handle that?
I don't care to make anybody comfortable. Literally a rule of mine. And I feel like I have just been, being Black, being queer, being a woman, growing up poor, like the social economic disparities, I have been so uncomfortable in my life. Do you think I care to make people comfortable? And actually, I think people are extremely comfortable around me because of that, because I'm not going out of my way to make people comfortable. And I think when we do like press around Harlem and they're like, how does it feel to be leading? I don't care to be leading, know nothing about no queer people. And it's not like I don't care about queer people, because I do, and I care about queer rights. But as soon as I'm put in a position where I am the voice of queer people or queer Black people or queer Black women, then they rob me of my own individuality. And so then it's like, well, why would you say that? That's not my experience. Or why would you say that? That's offensive to these people. Or why would you? Because this is how I feel. And so to maintain my autonomy, I can only speak from Jerrie's perspective. And that has to be respected. And if the things I do happen to have an amazing or what kind of ripple effect in the queer community, then that's amazing. But I'm not setting myself up to be the voice of a bunch of people who are so nuanced, where the experience is so nuanced. And I've never heard anybody ask a white man, like, are you gonna be the voice of white men now that you've done this movie? It's like, even when they play characters that you're like, now you shouldn't even have done that, they still don't ask that question, right? Because I think sometimes white people have the gift to be transformative, right? Like I played Thai. I don't ever have to do anything like that again, right? I could, but that's not my, I'm thinking of more of different things and different ways to expand. But as a queer Black woman, it's a little bit more like you have to do a little bit more convincing for that. And so it's just, for me, I'm just like, I don't want to be the voice of a whole people. I do want to sometimes speak for people and energies who are not in the room. Like a lot of times I think people have misconceptions about poor people or about access, right? And so in rooms where people speak freely about access, I do want to be a reminder that there are people who don't have access to basic needs, right? And so there are things that I want to speak up for because it's my experience, but I never want to say, I am the voice of this, because there's just so much fucking nuance. And there are so many people who need their voices heard as well, that I just want to live in my autonomy. And if that's an inspiration, then it is. And if it's not, that's okay, because I'm still living in my truth.
Yeah. I feel like too, when you get crowned the like representation for X community, you have to be really weary of like who's crowning you, because it robs you of agency. It really does. Like I'm honored to represent gay Asian men. Like I am, truly. But at the same time, like it does, like all the things you were talking about, it robs you of agency sometimes as like an individual. And I will say that like, no one hates me more than like certain gay Asian men, because they've been told like, that's your guy now. And it's like, no, like I don't need that. I don't want that. I just want to make shit, And like, it's frustrating to have to now like show up and like feel like I have to be all these different things to people I don't even fucking know, or care if they live or die, And
just to be clear, I don't hate white men. Like on my like best days, I am like, put me in the mind of a mediocre white man and I can get anything done, So just so you know, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just using you as an example for all of the privileges you have, okay? That's all.
White men, this is a safe space. No, I completely, I mean, the monolith aspect of things. We like, it's been 5 minutes since there wasn't maybe one token queer character who got killed off after 2 episodes. After it's 2 thin cisgender white women and they kiss because the producers thought that'd be hot to watch. And then like one of them, she had to leave town, which doesn't even get written off. It's like she's just killed off, or like, that was 5 minutes ago, it feels like, culturally. So that monolith, like, there's so much variety, difference, people who don't like each other, like beefs, like there's so much, people are not a monolith. And I feel like there's still so much caution. Am I wrong? Like it sounds like, there are more opportunities, but there's still, the gatekeeping is what it is. Those people are who they are. And there is a perception that like these people have to be role models, these characters have to be role models and kind of unassailable because we're afraid of people getting mad.
And also, I think we also have to talk about a little bit, just like how dangerous and violent it is to not see this type of representation, right? That's how people are like writing laws for people that they don't understand or they don't know. Like when you see things that you can't experience in your immediate reality, right? When you live in a place where there's only one Black person in your town, I can't even believe there's towns that still exist like that, but there are, or no queer people, right? There's a sense of comfort that you can get with the job that we do, to be able to turn a channel. There's so much access with media now, right? To be able to turn a channel and see people who look like you, which is why, you know, the old guard or whatever it is, why there feels like there's such a fierce protection over white supremacy, because there is so much, in reality, so much diversity, right? There's in reality so many diverse experiences. And so when we think about the gatekeepers, right, it's all a similar story that they're trying to uphold. And so there is like, of course, there's going to be only 3 spots for the Black whatever, this person, or the gay, this person, because that is not, you know, people are saying like, you know, oh, well, you know, drag show, you can't go to a drag show because then it's gonna, and it's just like, oh, RuPaul's Drag Race has been on for how many seasons? There's not, you know, there's no danger in it, but that's the image that they're trying to uphold. And so it's essential, like the stuff that we're doing is essential. Being here is essential. Having these conversations is essential, because there's a threat on the lives of queer people. There's a threat on the lives of women. There's a threat on the lives of Black people. And those are so many different layers of realities that we have to live with. And so sometimes it does change a person's mind to have come in and see a movie on screen, and there's like multiple Asian people on fucking Fire Island who are just having fun and like kissing and shit. You know what I mean? Or a trans character that it's just like it to me, it's such a immediate and important thing that it's also, we have to talk about the fact that it is a little life and death right now, it feels like, too.
Yeah, because the fact is that like most people in America will not meet someone like us, you know, or not, maybe actually probably, yeah, that's true. Like you are probably the only trans person a lot of people in America know because of your show, because of the access you have. And that's humanizing. And that is how we change hearts and minds and like really like shift things. Like storytelling is so powerful. And like, I don't like, people ask sometimes, like they're like, you realize you're over indexed actually in terms of representation in the media. Like there's actually in comparison to how many there actually are of queer people and LGBTQ people, there's too much of it. And it's like, actually, no, like we actually, it's so necessary and life affirming.
And the purpose of art anyway is to provoke thought. Like, I mean, we know we talk about the business side of this, and it is a business, and it is something that, you know, advertisers want to use to, like, you know, keep eyes on the screen and keep money in their pockets, keep people buying things. Yes, that is definitely part of it, but we're also artists, and that's the purpose of art, is to get you to see things, is to get you to question the ideas that you have, is to get you to make up an idea about something, is to get you to see, like, what is your voice? How do you feel about something? And if something makes you uncomfortable, great, talk about it. Let's have a dialogue about it. That's how we connect as people. That's how we connect with the world around us. And it's part of it. So to try to make things that is more palatable, or that make people not think, or that make people not feel something, is like the antithesis of like why we even do what we do in the first place, you know?
Yeah, I feel very strongly about the life and death aspect of it, and not just because the human rights of trans people, queer people, are under siege. You know, I just want to point that out, that in the moment that we're living in, they're like the active campaign of it is life or death, like quite literally, but also, you know, like for the young people coming up, not seeing yourself is a form of violence. And I have talked to, you know, I've done a fair amount of reporting on this, and I'll never forget someone telling me about a story with queer characters who were, you know, like middle-aged, had been together for a while, a young person telling me, I didn't know that was possible because I'd never seen like an older gay couple just that had been together for a long time. And I'm like, that breaks my heart, and it makes me furious, because speaking of, you know, there are stories about people out there dating or whatever, but like also the representation of just like boring middle-aged people, like, you know what I mean? if you've never seen yourself in a host of different situations, you can't imagine yourself into the world in some ways. And in that art that you're speaking of, that connection, that thought that we're trying to provoke to some degree is that we see you and you matter. You exist. And I think when people don't see that, the message they get is, I don't matter, and the world doesn't need me or want me. And the mental health effects of that on people of all ages in the queer communities is real still. So that's my soapbox part. Sorry, I had to say it. I think we're going to take audience questions if we could. We're going to have a microphone, and if folks, let's turn it on. Hi.
Hi. I appreciate what you told and what you have done. I would like to critique the organizers for not having a Hispanic person in the panel. I think it's important. It's part of the queer stories we want to see. And I would like to go deep in what you already told about the attacks to transgender, especially Brian. Your show's supposed to be in Texas, and they recently banned hormone therapy.
Yes.
I want to know your thoughts about it.
It's dangerous to do that. People's lives are literally in danger. People who, whether they're using I want everybody to know, it's a coordinated effort attack. It's systematic. There's groups that are behind this effort who are getting candidates into positions to do these sorts of things, which is all about, keeping political power, but lives are at stake because of it. But there's organizations like the Human Rights Campaign, which I'm on the board of directors. There's a lot of boots on the ground organizations like Equality Texas who are doing what they need to do, filing lawsuits against these because they're unconstitutional. These medical health bans, they're unconstitutional. You can't rate. I mean, they're doing it, they're writing it, they're putting in there, but it's not necessarily going to stand. But please, if you are trans or not, please use your voice. Please advocate against this. That's the one thing they can't take from us is our voice. And we can only speak so much as a community. And they'll just say, oh, that's just them. That's just what they want. But if other people are saying, no, this is wrong across the board, and it's going to affect me, because whatever policies they enact upon us, they can enact upon you, right? It's just hormone prescriptions are available, and they, especially for young people, hormone blockers. So there's a whole litany of standards of care that you have to go through before you even get access to care. Gender affirming care for young people is usually just saying, that's the pronoun you want to use, we're going to use that pronoun. That's the name you want to use, we're going to use it. That's the kind of clothes you want. That's gender affirming care for young people. And then when they get to a certain age, after they have their therapy and things like that, then they can, talk about with their parents and with the prescribers on whether or not they want to try hormone blockers. But there's a process involved in here that a lot of these people who are trying to do the fear mongering are purposely overlooking, right? So these puberty blockers have already been on the market for years for people who are going into puberty too soon. And they've been proven to be effective. The medical community agrees with this. They know this. And if that's something they want to prescribe for their children who are not trans, they can prescribe that. But in the law that they're trying to pass now, they're saying, well, if you're trans, then you can't use it. Right? So it's unconstitutional, and it's going to be stricken down, but it won't be stricken down if enough people aren't showing up at these hearings, if enough people aren't going to these school board meetings, because they're working on a local level to kind of build up their base. So please participate in your community politics. Please participate in your state policies, because that's the only way to really stop this, because it's an unmitigated, coordinated attack that I do not agree with, and that it is going to cause the demise of a lot of beautiful families. People are going to have to leave the states. They're going to have to find places to go, or they're going to die.
Thank you.
Hey guys, the question I want to ask, and right before I ask this, I want to point out, Jerrie, when I started watching Harlem, which just popped up during Christmas 2021 on my Prime, and I was like, what is this? And I saw a trailer. I'm like, this looks good. I started watching. I just could not stop. And the funny thing is, when I was watching this show, I realized I had no Black lesbian representation ever in my life. I couldn't even recall a character that I had ever seen. And your character talks about women like my buddy Malik talks about women. And I was just thinking, I was like, she talks about women like Malik. And I was like, why don't I understand this? Why can't? And then I was thinking, I have no Black lesbian representation until now from this show. And it's going on 2022 when I started watching it. But anyway, great show and love the cliffhanger like I told you a couple days ago. But what I want to ask each and every one of y'all, how do you see in Hollywood where a white gay character is taken and handled compared to like Black, Asian, how do you see any difference in how they handle it? Like what they want to do with the character or change it or anything? Are they given more handling of care or more accolades or is it about the same?
It's sort of tough because now we're getting really into the minutia because there's not a lot of gay representation, period. And then to then break it down even further into the sub groups too, it is it's tough to parse out. I mean, in general, I think white characters are given just in general across the board more agency and more depth and or seen that way anyways, or lauded that way. But yeah, I don't know. That's really.
I think you kind of hit it. There's just overall in how representation is happening, white people do have more humanity because there's more white people behind the storytelling, and so they can see more of the humanity. And even if the person who's writing the character isn't gay themselves, they understand navigating the world as a white man, and so they can really kind of dig into it and get into the granular level issues that they're having. You get this fully presented person where if they're trying to even thinking about writing a Black gay character, they don't know that much about the culture that would inform how that person is navigating the world. So you will get maybe a flat character who is in service of, or the partner of the white character. You know what I mean? So,
but do they reach out and say, "Hey, we need the story. Can you sit around this panel and tell us your experiences?" Or just did you write for Fire Island?
Yeah, I wrote it. Yeah.
Okay, so that's different.
Yeah.
But if you have white writers, how do they ever say, sit down? Because I remember on the Jeffersons, Marla Gibbs would hear all the white men talking. And she's like, what are y'all talking about? And she'd sit down at the table. And she's like, that's not the way it goes down with Black folks.
Right.
And she started giving her input with Norman Lear and stuff. And so that helped change how,
and she did that unpaid. How often have you had to change a line or give input for free?
Jeez.
It also boils down to sometimes I know this is free, but if I don't say this,
right,
then I'm gonna look crazy.
Yeah, and it's coming out of my mouth.
Yes, and so it has to be that. But to your original question, it's for me. I feel like where I see where gay white men are, and a part of it gives me a little bit of hope, or it tells me where we can go, right? Because now you see more gay white men who are coupled, who have been coupled for a long time, who have a kid, who have adopted a kid. Sometimes they choose a little Asian girl or some shit like that. They don't talk about the fact that she's Asian. But
Modern Family.
but then it's so we can see a family or a secular family structure or whatever where it's just a family. It's just about a family. This person happens to have two dads and they've been together for a long time, and it's not really always about the queerness and stuff like that. And right now we don't have that with lesbians. We don't have that with men. If it's a gay male couple, at least one of them cannot be white, but one of them has to be white right now. And
right
so,
there. It's exactly that.
Yeah.
I have talked to so many actors who are like, let's do diversity. Let's do a diversity and have a gay couple. And they will not have two Black characters together. They will not have two Asian. No, that's too. What? How is that too?
Well, because
too
then
much?
it becomes a Black show.
Yeah.
So if you know what I mean, or then it becomes an Asian show. So if you have too many of a diversity, then it becomes a diversity show, which is not necessarily true because we have friends who are of different races. We have more than one. I have more than one white friend. You know what I mean?
So
I didn't know you knew white people.
I know too, girl.
Very generous.
I just made 2 yesterday, right, girl?
I'm kidding.
well, I mean, but
Thank you.
that's the pattern though, right? It's we're going to have a gay couple. It's going to be a cisgender white man. And then that person's male partner who we'll see for two scenes per season with a little peck on the lip, like tiny little peck on the cheek. Like there's like, I'm like, okay, that's some representation. Sure. Go ahead. Did you want to say something, Joel?
No, I was just looking at.
Yes, Tommy, don't be afraid. The mic doesn't blow up, only on Saturdays.
Yeah. Oh my God! Back away!
Okay. So in general, like we've been talking about, it seems like there's this reticence from a lot of audiences to kind of experience new things that aren't previously based on a classic or, a pre-existing property. And like you were saying earlier about Insecure, you don't have to be in on everything to like something or enjoy it. So what do you see as like a way forward of trying to get people to be more open to things that are more wholly original, not previously based on something, without having to do all of that heavy lifting or catering to try and make them understand every single little thing?
Write a horror movie.
I was literally about to say the same thing.
Honestly.
That is the space. Mid-budget horror is where the original ideas are living and succeeding right now. And I think like Jordan Peele is like a perfect example of this, and like his like all of his movies, but even movies that came out this year like Megan, Smile, like the Barbarian. Like those are like such original great ideas, and like all of them did so well, and audiences resonate with audiences in such an interesting way. I think like horror is a really powerful medium right now, and more queer people need to make queer horror movies, because our lives are scary. So
they also make a shit ton of money, and you can make them for very little.
Exactly.
They make a shit ton of money and nobody respects them.
And it's also it's one of the few places where the industry is allowing people to cast relative unknowns and leads too. Like that's like still such a huge problem, is like I want to cast my next movie, like I want to cast my love interest as like another person of color, but they're like, it has to be a name. And it's like, well, we cannot create names unless we give people opportunities. And it's like, it's this weird like secular thing where it's like you have to be a name to get cast in this movie, but in order to get cast in this movie, you have to be a name. It's like all these like crazy things. And so yeah, horror, that's it.
Good call. Also, Please Like Me, one of my favorite things ever.
One of the best things I've ever done. Honest to God.
Hi. Second on horror. Horror is incredible. Also, Moonface was probably one of my favorite things I've heard in the audio space. If you've not heard it, it's an incredible story, and also very specific, and had nothing to do with the community I belong in. But I'm a producer, and I want to know, and I'm in my queer community, but obviously I'm so privileged to work with incredible creatives of color, and I want to support them as best as I can in those rooms that I have more access in. So what are some things you wish producers were bringing into the room with them to really like represent you in the best way? And what do you want us yelling at these white men, because we have some privilege to do so?
Don't change the idea.
Yes. And then bring a black person with you.
I was about to say, bring the
Asian with you. Bring them in because we can advocate for things in a way maybe you can't, but we won't be able to get into the room unless you bring us into the space. So that's the best way to do it, is to co-produce with somebody, bring somebody else on, give them opportunity. And that helps us also, after that project, have some leeway into the next thing, because we were co-producers on this thing with you. So it's really about bringing the other people into the room with you when you're able to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, honestly, it has to be a deal breaker. We are, this is going to be the director. This is going to be like, you have to, it's a fight, and the community is fighting. But if people want to really be an ally, they have to have skin in the game and really fight and fight in ways, again, that word discomfort. It might be uncomfortable, and you might walk out of some rooms without the green light, but you fought,
Thank you everyone for this amazing panel. I want to ask, how do you balance creating stories that center queer joy while the world is crumbling around us?
That's an amazing question.
I feel like, and I want everybody to jump in here, the only way to stop the cratering is with the joy and showing the joy, to showing that even in the midst of all of this horrible shit, we are still celebrating, we are still finding each other, we're still beautiful, we're still fabulous. This is when we need the joy the most.
They want to see us crumble. They want to see us fall. They want to see us sad and despondent, and we can't give into that. And it's an act of defiance to be joyful right now.
Yes. And one of my favorite books, Pleasure Activism, Adrienne Marie Brown, and she talks about like the essential nature of finding pleasure in activism. And I think it's like we are so used to like the burnout culture, right? You fight, then you burn out, and you don't want to fight anymore. Then the next people take on the load and they fight. But it's like the fight truly is like still going to those drag shows. It's still dressing up. It's still being you. It's still being happy and excited. And for me, being accessible, right? And so I have to have a good time. Like that's my boundary, is that like, yeah, I'm going to talk my shit and I'm going to tell you what we need to do, but I also have to be having a good time for my mental health, because then I spiral and then I need somebody to come on to help me in order to help the cause. And now it's just, what are we actually doing? And so I think joy is the most important part. And I think finding it outside of June is
critical. Critical.
Like, y'all know we can have fun on July 2nd.
Come on.
Okay? We don't have to wait, but
when I do ketamine in August, it's protest.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, no. Who cares? Who fucking cares, right? Me. I don't. No, but I think that, like, even beyond the things we're talking about today, the world is ending in such a slow but spectacular fashion. Like, it feels really scary. But something that my therapist said to me was that the outside doesn't have to match the inside. And it's very easy to sort of say that, to not internalize all of these things. And it's important to be proactive and to be, fighting against and fighting back. But yeah, prioritize your mental health, treat yourself.
And the world is ending because a new world is starting.
Yes.
Okay? We are like truly having to, the old way of doing things is dying, which is why it's so important for us to realize that, like, there's not like an end and then we're on a precipice and we're in the abyss of an end. No, there are new things happening. So this is also such a great opportunity to like retrain our brains to newness, to think about actually what we need and what we're actually advocating for, and like the basis of humanness, right? And so I think it can be a depressing time, but I always think an obstacle is an opportunity for something new to emerge. And I am excited for whatever is on the other side of this, and for us to be like more aware. More people are voting, right? More people are thinking about different things that we didn't think about, because now like lives are in danger. And so this is such a wonderful opportunity to shift the culture in a real way on a large scale. And so thinking about what kind of person you want to be, what kind of advocate you want to be, what kind of artist you want to be is really important in this time, because like we're really, and on another level, we're transitioning from the 3D to the 5D. But that's something else, a conversation we can have after this. But it's such a spectacular time. That's all I have to say.
Thank you for the wonderful questions, everyone, and thank you for coming. Thank you to these panelists. You guys are amazing.
Thank you.